So to get started, the first thing I'd like to do is just take 1 minute in your groups and just quickly unpack what your definition of vulnerability is. Just for 1 minute. You can shout out a couple of terms if you like. But what is, because we have a lot of different understandings of what vulnerability is. So what we're going to be doing in this session is we're going to just unpack and clarify the myth as to what vulnerability really is. And then we're going to have a look at what it means from a leadership perspective, and we're going to have a look at what it means for us, as women and leadership. And then we're going to look at some very, very practical tips. But please, vulnerability is not reserved for women. It's anyone who dares to lead, yeah? So we'll be doing that. Just take 1 minute. Just take 1 minute and shout out some of them. What is vulnerability? So what I'd like to invite you to do today, for the short space that we have, is to really just dig deep and just spend a little bit of good quality time with yourself and reflect. So I'm going to ask you a lot of reflective questions, and I'd like you just to go there, because that's being part of being vulnerable, is just going there and just unpacking that a bit. Yeah? So vulnerability, if we take a couple of the extracts out of what Brenna had to say, vulnerability is the emotion we experience. You heard her saying uncertainty, risk, and emotional exposure. It's not winning or losing, but it's having the courage to show up when you can't control the outcome. Not on. Now? Better? Okay. It's when you're able to admit when you don't know something, when you've made a mistake, your ability to be able to say sorry when you know that when you violated the rights of someone else. It's your ability to be able to say that you made a mistake. It's not bearing your soul. Be very, very careful. A lot of us look at vulnerability and we think it's about disclosure. If I can just give it all out there and just share who I am. That's not vulnerability. It's not disclosure. And as we go through it, we'll see. It's not about cowering in the corner, and it's not, and definitely not, a sign of weakness. In fact, vulnerability is absolutely integrated into courage. You can't separate the two. And with courage comes absolute strength. It's absolutely powerful to be vulnerable, rather than to see it as I'm being weak in how display. So a couple of the myths that Brené brings out that's important for us to look at is we think it's a weakness. It is not. It is absolute superpower of anybody, whether you're a leader and wanting to lead and have influence and impact on people, or whether you're a person that just connects with anyone else around you in whichever capacity. It's an absolute strength. Many people say, I don't do vulnerability. The point is, and I'm going to read a little passage to you just now. You did vulnerability when you were small because you were dependent on so many people around you. You do vulnerability. You might not admit it. You might not be consciously aware of it, but you can't do life. You can't lead if you don't do vulnerability. And if you don't do it, it will do you, because it puts you on your knees sometimes so be consciously aware of vulnerability. Our belief sometimes that we can go it alone. We can't. We are connected beings. We don't do anything alone. For our engineers and our technical people and our analytics who think you can engineer yourself out of uncertainty and discomfort, I think the world taught us a lesson. In the last couple of years, you don't engineer your way out of anything. It engineers you. So you will be faced with uncertainty. You will have scenarios of discomfort. How are you going to deal with it when it comes your way? Some of us say, I've been burnt before, and therefore I won't trust until you show me that you trust me. No. Trust comes before vulnerability? No. you become and you are vulnerable, and in that way you earn trust. You show and demonstrate trust before you expect someone to give it to you. Yeah? And then vulnerability is disclosure. No, it's not. In fact, in vulnerability, you have very clear boundaries. Yeah? So those are some of the myths that we need to look at, and just check and see if you're finding yourself following any one of those myths as such. So I want to spend a little bit of time now, and this is where I want you to dig deep a little bit. And so, okay, so if that gives us a broad outline of what vulnerability is, let's just go straight into the practical and say, temperature test quickly. How vulnerable do you believe you are being right now in the way that you show up? Do you demonstrate vulnerability? Scale 1 to 5. Who are the fivers? Yeah? Okay? And yeah, you don't all need to say, you don't need to go down to the 1 or the 2, but just do that quick, honest little dipstick temperature test and say, where am I when it comes to vulnerability? If I truly understand what it is, how am I showing up in relation to vulnerability? So I want to spend a little bit of time on unpacking a couple of the critical things that we would do. And I want you to ask yourself, am I doing this? Am I displaying this in the way that I believe I'm demonstrating vulnerability? All right. So the first thing we look at is vulnerability is about being grounded in purpose and in values. Do you know who you are? Do you know, can you articulate, can you express, and can you share with anyone around you who you are? What is your purpose? What is your personal DNA? Who are you as such? Are you clear and do you have clarity on who you are? And what are your core values that underpin who you are? Be careful. Many of us say, oh, it's integrity and it's honesty and it's trust and it's this and it's that. Because just now I'm going to ask you, but if you're saying that those are your values, are you living them out? Can I see that? Can I say, I see in your behavior honesty and trust? Not you told me that your values are integrity and trust. Can I see it in your behavior? So I'm asking you again, what is your core purpose? What is your purpose? And what are your values? Not the ones that you like other people to hear, or the ones you didn't exercise and you ticked the top values and then you prioritize them a bit and you say, hey, this looks cool. The ones that really come from inside of here in your gut. You know, the ones that says, if I see injustice or I see inequality, it burns me and I have to do something about it. Oh, that's a value, yeah? That's what we're saying. So are you very clear? Are you grounded in who you are, and are you grounded in your values? Because remember, your purpose and your values have a direct impact in how you show up. Yeah? And that's part of vulnerability, is to be very, very clear as to who you are. Because we spoke about boundaries just now. How do I set a boundary when I don't know who I am? How do I set a boundary if I don't know what is so critically important to me, where my beliefs are anchored into? Yeah? So that's the first one. Are you grounded in purpose and values? Are you clear on exactly who you are? Second part we look at is self-leadership. Are you on that journey of personal mastery, of self-leadership? And how far are you on that journey that today can you actually say that, one, I know who I am. I am perfect in all my imperfections. Yeah? Do you know who you are? Truly know who you are. Perfect in all your imperfections. You can look at that mirror and you can say, I'm perfect. Not I have a skewed nose and my ears are too big and whatever, I'm too short or I'm too tall. But I am perfect with everything I have. All my gifts, talents and everything that I have, and the ones that I don't. I'm still perfect in all imperfect. I'm good with me.
Yes, yes.
Yeah? I don't need you to be good with me. I am good with me. Yeah? And then with that breeds self-confidence, which says, I am okay with who I am. I am enough. And I truly believe I am enough. And when you're self-confident, you have the ability to laugh at yourself. You have the ability to actually accept those imperfections and say, I'm brilliant at. I'm not being arrogant when I say that. I am brilliant at.
Yes, yes.
Yeah? And I'm also able to say, and laugh at myself and say, hey, I can't do certain things, you know. And many times what we do is we spend our time trying to mitigate our weaknesses. We spend so much effort and energy trying to raise all our attention on trying to improve something that we're not fundamentally good at. And we forget about the strengths and the things we're absolutely great at and capitalizing on those. So when you have confidence, you can laugh at and accept the things you're not that great at, and you can build and work on the things you are good at. Think about leadership. Then it means you don't need to own all the spaces. You create spaces for others, because collectively we're better than. Because I can tap into your strengths and your gifts, and I can share mine when I have them, and then collectively we're better together. Yeah? That comes from self-confidence. And then self-efficacy says, I can do life. I can lead, I can do life. Yeah? I've got this. Yeah? And the combination of that is our journey of self-leadership and personal mastery. And can you see, you need that. If you're going to demonstrate, to be able to be courageous and demonstrate vulnerability, you need to know who you are. You need to be confident. You need to be your own cheerleader. And you need to believe that you've actually got it.
Yes,
yeah?
Yes.
So, where are you on self-leadership? How kind are you to yourself? And then we talk a little bit about your emotional agility, your red hats, if you want to, yeah? For those of you interested, this is the work of Susan David, Emotional Agility, and Susan helps us a lot to actually understand that when it comes to, because it's a critical part of vulnerability, when it comes to emotions, it's one of the things that we really need to get to grips with. And what we understand in our emotional agility is, are we able to show up? Showing up in this context says, are you able to show up when it comes to knowing, labeling, and owning your emotions? Not judging them at all. Yeah? So when you are in a situation and someone at work has said something in a meeting, and you are extremely angry about it, do you own that emotion? Or if you are extremely humiliated, do you own that emotion? Or are you too shy to say, I was extremely humiliated by what you said to me? And so part of showing up as well is your ability to accurately identify how you genuinely feel. Because that's when you can be vulnerable and you can express to someone exactly how you feel about a situation. But you need to own it up for yourself as well. So showing up is knowing my true emotion, identifying my true emotion. Step 2 is stepping out. What stepping out does is it liberates you, because it says that I'm detaching myself from emotion. I'm not, and I'm going to give you a tip over here, don't say I am sad or I am angry. You're not. You're Jeanette.
Yes.
I might be feeling anger, or I might be experiencing, but I am not that emotion. So that brings that confidence again. You are much bigger than any emotion.
Amen.
Yeah? And when you walk your why, how do you make sense out of the emotions that you are experiencing? I tap back into my purpose and my values. Yeah? And I don't judge. And then when I move on, I regulate, and then I decide what I'm going to do with any emotions that I'm experiencing. But the power of emotional agility when it comes to vulnerability is my ability to be able to recognize what emotions I'm experiencing and my ability to be able to express those emotions when I'm in dialogue or connecting with anyone. Yeah? So where are you on emotional agility? Yeah. Then we get to the important one, and that's alignment. And this is where it's going to get tougher for us now. All right? I'm going to get a little bit tougher here. So I'm going to ask you, how aligned are you? Because this is where vulnerability starts either hiding itself away or it starts surfacing. So if you have a purpose and if you have values, how are you showing up? What behaviors are you displaying? Are they in alignment? Is who you say you are and what you believe in demonstrated in your behaviors? Can I see that in you, in the way that you actually show up around other people? And I want you to, have that quiet moment now and think about that. Am I truly aligned within? It takes you back to the previous slide. If you're feeling an incredible amount of anxiety, stress, overwhelm, go and dig deep and identify what's not working for you, because something's not in alignment. Something is not in alignment. You're giving something of yourself or too much of something of yourself to someone else or something else or some contextual thing around you, and it's tapping out of you and you're not in alignment. And that's when you start experiencing those extreme elements of stress and burnout. It's not just because you've got a lot of work, there's something else going on there, and it's called alignment or congruence. All right. And then that starts showing itself up in the way that you connect with people around you. That's when people give you feedback and start saying, but the person who you say you are and the person who we see is not the same person. And remember that alignment is not, I'm this person when I'm at work and I'm this other person when I'm at home. There are not two of you, there's only one. There is only one of you. And when you say, I'm this one here and I'm that one there, or the context or the environment shapes how I show up, I'm not in alignment with myself, or I'm not being honest about being in alignment with myself. So, how aligned are you currently in terms of your purpose, your values, and how you actually show up? Are you wearing masks? Okay. Don't be concerned if you go very quiet now. Yeah. But are you wearing masks? Are you wearing a mask? Are you hiding from yourself? Are you honest about who you are and where you are at? Or are you putting up a show for yourself as well? Don't want to go there. Don't want to think about that. And then, are you wearing a mask with others, hiding yourself from others? If we're talking about vulnerability being courageous, authenticity, and vulnerability is integrated, and you can almost not separate the three from each other. Courageous, authenticity, vulnerability. Then we cannot have masks. And then are you so busy trying to be who other people want you to be that in the process you lose your own identity? So that's the question, am I wearing masks? And then the beauty of the video that we saw earlier on with the Theodore Roosevelt. Vulnerability, the one thing you have the right to say when it comes to vulnerability, and if you're brave and if you are courageous, is that it's not a spectator sport. So critics cannot sit in the cheap seats and criticize. Get into the arena, be courageous, be authentic, and be vulnerable. And that requires us to invite ourselves and invite people around us to get into that arena, to get dirty with blood, sweat, and mud, to get dirty. And what Brené Brown means when she says that is vulnerability, being willing to take that emotional risk associated with actually being vulnerable when you are in connection and communication with people. Remember, it's not about disclosure. It's not about telling stuff. It's not, you can't go out there as a leader and just tell stuff and say, I've been vulnerable because I shared my life history with you. That's not vulnerability. Yeah? Vulnerability is, remember we said, is when you're able to actually admit that you're wrong, when you're able to say, I don't know. I'm your leader and I don't know. Can we do this together? Can we find the solution together? As a leader, I lost it. I wasn't emotionally agile today. I was overwhelmed. I couldn't put it together. I couldn't keep it together today. But I acknowledge it. And I'm being vulnerable about that. Okay? So why are we not doing vulnerability? And just a quiet reflection again. We either do it because we don't believe we're enough. We're not getting there yet in terms of personal mastery or self-leadership, where we really, really own who we are. Or else we're going to start externalizing it by looking at what is the fault of everyone else around us, which is sometimes very easy for us to do, is to go and have a look and see, but what are they doing? And that's why I'm not, instead of internalizing or owning it. So if I'm honest, they'll think less of me or they'll use it against me. Speaks to the culture and the context within which you might be functioning, and then looking towards that. And I know in some environments people will say, it's career limiting. It's too risky. I can't do this. Put my mask on. I'll comply. I'll adhere to. I'll just go with the flow. That's not courageous and that's not brave. No one else is honest, so why should I be honest? But I thought honesty and integrity was one of your core values. It's their issue and their shortcomings, and they make me behave the way I do. They make me feel lesser, they make me feel inadequate, and so I'll go quiet and I won't be who I am. Or else I can also apply a different stance and just say, well, I'm better than them, so I'll just quieten down and I'll just do what I need to do. If we're applying any of those kinds of behaviors and we're in leadership, then we need to have a look at, but I'm not leading me very well. And if I can't lead me very well, then how well am I going to be leading people around me? Yeah? So if we get down to integrating then, we just reflect a little bit on this. So we integrate leadership. And remember, a leader, we're not talking about title, role. Anyone can be a leader or is a leader in any variety of different situations. And if you look at the work of Kevin Cashman, and those of you who like personal reflection and internal work, mastery work, Leading from the Inside Out by Kevin Cashman, brilliant book. And Kevin Cashman's work doesn't try to explain all the technical terms of leadership. Leadership is courageous, authentic influence that creates enduring value. Doesn't matter where it is that you're leading. If you can do something that is courageous, where you can be authentically, genuinely you, and you can unlock opportunities for other people around you by having influence and creating value to them, to a business, to an organization, to an institute, to anything, that something is more or bigger or better than before you entered the space. And you have an ability to influence, whether it be one person or a group of people that you can have an influence, then you are a leader, true leader. So vulnerability, courage, and authenticity is intertwined. And if you look at the latest thought leadership work coming out on leadership, it's becoming less and less about technical aspects of leadership and competencies of leadership, and it's becoming much more about who you are as a leader and what you bring as a leader. And if you look at the competencies, when you're looking at clusters of competencies on leadership, you will see what rises absolutely to the top is integrity and courageous authenticity. Just rises up on everything, because people are saying we need to trust, because our world is working all around, going all around us, and we need you as the leader. We need to trust you. How do I trust you? When you're vulnerable, when you're courageous, when you're brave, when you say, I don't have all the answers. I wasn't appointed in this role because I have all the answers. I've appointed in this role because I'm going to be real and vulnerable in the way that we're going to do this together. So vulnerability, courage, and authenticity integrated. So how do we apply vulnerability in our leadership? We lead by example. And leading by example means that we engender trust by admitting we get it wrong, or we got it wrong, or we don't know. By just being genuine, authentic and genuine and real with the people that we work with. And then to create spaces where we give permission to people around us to be able to get it wrong. And that's probably a very difficult thing we sometimes battle with in organizational contexts, because we think everything has to be right. It never is always right. But we can either put a mask on and try and shy away from it and discipline it out of the system, or we can courageously actually face it when we don't get it right. And then we can find solutions and possibilities and opportunities and not shut down from the fact. And that requires us to leave our egos at the door. That's the one thing, is to lead by example. Call it out. Please do that. Please identify and look and see and hear people around you who are actually being vulnerable, and call it out. Call it out in a good, positive way, so that you can encourage that kind of behavior. Remember, vulnerability is not a weakness, it's an absolute strength. Let's call it out, show it up for what it actually is. That leader who is prepared to acknowledge, that is prepared to take the risk to say, I don't have the answers or the solutions to this problem, but we could do it together. Yeah? Call it out and celebrate it. And have a look and see how better teams and people around you function and perform when you're able to demonstrate vulnerability. Now remember, we are talking about women and leadership. And that is probably one of the greatest things that we do need to watch out for as women, is that we entrap ourselves in I'm not enough, or we trap ourselves in I have to display man-like behaviors in order to try and compete or be equal to. And if I dare to be me, I'll be deemed to be seen weak. I'm not going to go down that passage for you in this presentation. I'm just going to say, please go and sit down and talk to yourself, if those are the kinds of messages you're sending to yourself. And maybe just reflect on the presentation again. Yeah? So let yourself be the project you're working on. Start small and start layering trust and vulnerability. Go and have a look at all those environments or situations right now where you're finding yourself not being authentically who you are from a self-leadership point of view. Without excuses, without masks or whatever. This is me. This is how I lead. This is me as a whole person. This is what I bring as a leader, and having the confidence that you're able to do that without having to adopt a whole lot of other personas to try and accommodate what an external system is trying to dictate for you to be. And please go and introspect a little bit as to where are those situations, or with which people am I adopting different personas and I'm not allowing myself to be me. Do a little bit of that, and that's the project. Start small and start looking at different situations. Don't go out there now suddenly being all aggressive. Just go out there actually, because remember, what you might not have been doing up until now is you might be in a misaligned, incongruent state where you're going out there and trying to put on a show to hold it together, fundamentally knowing that this is not me. All right, because only you can make that choice. No one can make that choice for you. Only you can make the choice to be courageous and brave. And so you're asking, what am I giving of myself when I rather adopt and display behaviors that I believe the external world requires of me, versus, and what are the risks associated with me being naturally, genuinely me? And if I'm not yet accepting myself for who I am, then that's the first part that I need to work on. Little project I need to work on first before I'm genuinely going to be able to. Are you vulnerable with yourself? Are you real and authentic and genuine with yourself? Some final thoughts. Let ourselves be seen for who we really are. Love with our whole heart, even when there's no guarantee. You know, Brené Brown talks about wholeheartedness. Yeah, just be wholehearted. And that's, we're not talking about love as in relationships and that. We are connected beings wherever we are. And therefore love comes into everything we do. It's not sissy talk. Love comes into everything we do. When you genuinely care for people around you and you mentor and you coach and you support people, you're loving when you're doing that. Yeah. Practice gratitude and joy even when you are extremely afraid. Vulnerability is acknowledging the fact that I'm absolutely scared. The risks are huge, but I'm still going to take the risk. Yeah. Don't pretend we always know everything. It's probably one of the biggest things as leaders we always try to do is, you know, people ask us questions and we think it's our job to know. No. That's where you're incongruent. That's when you don't come up with integrity. That's when you don't be seen as someone who has authenticity. When you fuddle around and try to make as if you know. I don't have the answers. Give me one leader who knew how to handle the pandemic before it happened, that had it taped, that knew everything. And give me one person, or you're probably going to find there are going to be many who will never admit that they didn't have it taped. They thought they always knew the answers. Yeah? Okay. Ask for help. Help is not a weakness when you ask for help. That's vulnerability. Allow yourself to fail. You may make a mistake. Believe you are enough, and be very, very kind to yourself. Who we are is how we lead, and how we lead is who we are. And I'd actually like to read this to you from Brené's book, just as a closing, from Daring Greatly, and I want to read it. I didn't want to put it on the slides. It's called The Vulnerability Armory. As children, we found ways to protect ourselves from vulnerability, from being hurt, diminished, disappointed. We put on armor. We used our thoughts, emotions, and behaviors as weapons, and we learned how to make ourselves scarce, even to disappear. Now, as adults, we realize that to live with courage, purpose, and connection, to be the person whom we long to be, we must again be vulnerable. We must take off the armor, Put down the weapons, show up, and let our souls be seen. Isn't that powerful?
Super powerful.
Yeah, great. There we go. Thank you, everyone. I know it's been a very, very quiet reflection opportunity, but I'd like to really invite you to spend a bit of time with yourself after today's session. Don't think about what is it I need to do to be a better leader. Don't start there, because then you're always going to externalize what it is I need to do. Start with, what do I need to be first? What do I need to be for me first? And how do I lead myself first? And then I'm able to show up and go out and lead. And when I lead from a place of authenticity. And then I become brave and courageous. And I'm comfortable to be vulnerable. And I'm comfortable to invite vulnerability in people around me. And that's my invitation to you. Thank you.
Very powerful.